Hello everyone, my name is Michael and I want to welcome you back to Sovereign Gaming. So I am actually quite excited about today's episode as we continue to build out the SimCity in Create a World, because we're finally leaving the eastern part of the city. We're finally done the old town and the port neighborhoods, or at least for the time being we are. Again, I'm open to revisiting some things and implementing any changes or anything new that I wanted to put in there. So yeah, today we are going to be building out a little bit of the downtown. I continue on with the road work and the framework there. Speaking of which, I do want to talk about the downtown lots. I know that in one of the first episodes, in fact, I'm pretty sure it was the first episode, I decided to go with a grid that really adhered to two 50 by 50 lots that were side by side with each other. So that would be a total of 4 50 by 50 lots within a block. Well, I just wanted to kind of reiterate here that can change. I just wanted it for an even grid throughout the downtown core. So everything that you see here is certainly subject to change. I am not afraid to adjust the road work within the downtown core itself, but I did want that 50 by 50 grid to be even throughout the entire city, so that when I actually do go back to make some changes, that I'm not having to make changes to other neighborhoods or having to reshape an entire neighborhood based on a little change that I needed to make. So yeah, if those 50 by 50 lots seem a little large to you, don't worry, because they likely, in fact, I am predicting right here, right now, that a lot of them likely won't stay as 50 by 50 lots. I might have to subdivide them into something a little smaller, and who knows what the roads are going to look like by the end of this project anyways. But I did want that structure of a gridded out core to work with so that we can get creative at a later time. I kept mentioning it before where I wanted the trains to surface yet again, and this is exactly where they are going to surface. They're going to surface in the government campus that we are creating today. And they're not just surfacing right in the middle of City Hall, of course. They are going to be surfacing and traveling a little bit to the central station lot that I will eventually build. So yeah, with the government plaza, I'm really just looking to include 3 buildings that each take a 64 by 64 lot, and I'm going to shape the land around those buildings and the layout that I have there. And that includes the rail bed that sits in just before it terminates at the central station. So yeah, one of the buildings is going to be a central station. Now, I actually plan on making that building into a really intricate library. I just want the library part to sit on top of the station platforms and such. I don't think such a thing actually exists in the real world, but from a functional perspective, I felt that it kind of made sense so long as the library parts were put on the upper levels. So it is going to be quite a tall structure in of itself, just to separate the noise whenever I get to actually building it. And the other 2 buildings, of course, within the government plaza are going to be the City Hall. That one is a very obvious one. The City Hall that came with the Roaring Heights world is actually the one that I plan on using. So I am very happy with that one because it's a taller building and I really just kind of wanted to help it beef up the skyline a little bit whenever I get around to using it. Remember, I can't access edit in game mode anymore because of a Sims 3 store purchase, so I won't be able to actually build out the lot for a while. And then the other lot that I wanted to put in the government plaza, there are 4 lots that I want to put here. So the third one that I wanted to put out in here is actually the police station, and that again is coming from Roaring Heights. It is a much taller building, and so with the government plaza, I'm gonna have the downtown core kind of lead up into it. There will be a cluster of buildings within the downtown core, but then just the street before it that we're just kind of looking at with the avenue. I'm thinking that what would make sense there for that block would actually be to put in some sort of a plaza and maybe even some sort of an amphitheater or garden. So just something a little more community friendly that all Sims can really use as a community. So that's kind of the plan here. I will have to see how that part comes about, and we won't be talking about it again for a while. But that is the vision that I wanted to share at this time. Oh, I totally forgot about the fourth building. The fourth building is definitely going to be the observatory from the Into the Future expansion pack. I'm very 50-50 on the observatory. Like, I want it in the actual main world because you can work an astronomy career out of there, and I like the idea of having engineers without having to download any custom careers, so that's why I'm kind of putting it in there. Plus, I have a few plans with it as well, just to help it blend in a little more, and I think that its positioning being at a prominent pinnacle of the entire downtown would be a great idea to make something that already stand out even more. Kind of like SimCity's signature tower. Anyways, the rail beds here were actually a little more difficult to make just because I had to combine a lot of those bridge rails and I had to sink them into the ground. And although I feel like it was okay, like with the way that it aligned, but I really needed the three rails to align as closely together as possible because they actually take up quite a bit of space. Like if I kept them at the same space and dropped a 64 by 64 lot on them, it wouldn't have made sense when I go in to actually do the build. So I had to make these rail lines each try to become get as close as together as possible with them, and the way that the rails just kind of connect up to each other just kind of looks a little jarring. I mean, I'm sure you're seeing some of the flashing right now, and there's unfortunately nothing I can do about it with these rail assets, but that was just something that I really had to contend with because I really, when I go to do the library central station build, I really want to get like platforms, foundations really in between each of the rails to really show off that there are different platforms that you could theoretically board. So that was my struggle with the emergence of the rail in this part of the city, and it also helps to carry on with the story of the rail going through the port and through Old Town and then up until the downtown core. So I was really happy with the way it turned out at the end of it, but it was definitely something that's not perfect, and definitely a set of infrastructure pieces that they're just not polished, and they can't be polished, if that makes any sense. So the retaining walls are back, and I am glad to have them back. I am doing the same thing that I did with the other train tunnels, and that's that is terracing. I was going to say tiering, but that's not a word. Anyways, I'm going to be terracing the tunnel to meet the ground level. I felt that it looked the most acceptable for like in comparison to the other tunnel terraces that I did. So I continued on doing this for the train tunnels that emerge in the downtown core. What ends up happening is the retaining wall actually ends up being pretty much up against the east-west avenue that I have built down there. Now with that east-west avenue, and I did mention this before, but I'm really considering making the lots that are actually connected to the east-west avenue more so like plazas or like an amphitheater for a live show venue event, and maybe even gardens. Again, this is a work in progress, so that could change, but I am thinking that something that is more that Sims can actually visit and and enjoy, like more public spaces is really the words that I was looking for there. And the reason for that is just because of the way that the retaining wall kind of butts up against it. Like, to me, it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense when it comes to placing buildings there, but I could be wrong, and who knows, I might even change my mind as we go further along in this SimCity build. The only thing that I'm kind of concerned about is fracturing the skyline a little too much, because I'm going to have the observatory from Into the Future and the City Hall and the police station from Roaring Heights, as well as a taller-ish central station library lot on the government plaza there. So my concern there is just kind of fracturing the skyline a little too much, because in normal cities, this would likely be very normal to look at, but in The Sims 3, it might just look like a big gap before another cluster of taller buildings, which I totally intend to put in the downtown core. I plan to flesh that out with a lot of taller buildings. So yeah, that's something that I have a concern over. However, we'll just kind of have to see how it goes about. And even when the government plaza does get completed, which is not until a few episodes out, like at this point, I still don't have an idea as to whether or not it's right to put more public spaces in front of the east-west running avenue or not. So yeah, I feel like it's gonna have to be something that I'll just have to experiment with just a little bit, and I might not even be able to be fully happy with what I do until I actually export the world into the Sims 3 game. So yeah, at this point, I'm just kind of smoothing out some of the terrain that surrounds these retaining walls. The thing is that these retaining walls need to look sleek, and they need to be that full concrete drop into the actual grassy terrain. And so I actually had to end up going back and adding in an extra retaining wall only to lower it so that it covered the entire ground. Doesn't look the best, but I think I disguised it well enough to kind of get away with it. The other thing that I kind of wanted to mention was the road layout, not the load layout, which is what I was going to say, but I said it anyways. The road layout of the government campus is going to be something that is a little more unique to the city. And so I'm going to be adding in like some portions of it where I've got some couplets, and also there are going to be a couple of more curves in the government campus as well. This is really to just signal and identify with the players that this is a different area, and it's a very and it's an area that was very much designed to look good per se. Maybe that's arguable by the end of this build, but but yeah, that's a real big idea here, was just to change up the road layout, make it look a little more swervy, a little more curvy, just to give that more visual intrigue into the area, while also being considerate that there is a central passenger rail station that actually hooks into the government campus. So that was the idea with the road layout here. And even in today's episode, like I don't complete it. I don't actually complete the whole road layout. I think I actually complete it in the next upcoming episode. But the idea with today's episode and today's focus is really just to lay out the bare bones of the government campus so that I could continue to build onto that in the next upcoming episode as well. Again, I just want to remind you, like, not to get too committed to the downtown core layout. Again, I just did it as a way to help guide me in designing the SimCity world while being able to accommodate for all of the lots so that any player can access any feature of the franchise, assuming that you have all of the expansion packs. So I'm not really too concerned. I'm not really too committed, to the grid that's happening here. I'm gonna allow more so my ideas and the neighborhoods to really influence the final layout of it all. So I just wanted to make a mention of that here, only because it's just looking like a grid, and there's only so much you can really do with the grid and with all of the shell buildings that I'll likely be using. So yeah, that's just something that I wanted to mention, is that I'm going to actually allow each of these streets to influence, to exist as a structural base, but also to allow each of these neighborhoods and areas of the streets to influence how the final layout actually comes to be. For example, the road that terminates at the center of the government campus, I might actually end up terminating it earlier to place in a 64 by 64 lot. Again, that is such a future build that that I hate to keep talking about it. So So yeah, just have to forgive me for planting early ideas into our heads here, but that's kind of the idea with this grid. Is just give yourself a good base to work out of, and giving myself really enough space so that I'm not having to sacrifice anything in lieu of something else. So a 64 by 64 lot could comfortably fit in one of these city blocks, maybe even two. I haven't really experimented so far, so I might be over talking myself there. But as soon as you place in like a 64 by 64 lot within one of these city blocks, suddenly it changes the look and feel of that street significantly, and it determines like what kind of buildings you can actually place on it. So that's also something else that I'm taking into consideration, and it's by no means like the limit of the creativity that I will be inputting into each of these streets for the downtown grid, because the downtown grid is really the lifeblood of the city, and having a grid like this, which kind of feels a little more sterile, is not my end game goal here. So yeah, the structure is there, it exists for a reason, and I promise that it will likely change in the future. In the next episode, we are going to continue building the government campus. I'm going to start actually introducing some plant life into it, and I'm going to continue with the seawall build throughout the government campus. There was a funny glitch that I kind of ran into, and I think it will be next episode, so I will certainly be showing that off, because it changes my plans when it comes to the seawall, unfortunately. But maybe I'm just being redirected to do something else with the design. That's what I tell myself. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you again for watching, and if you are enjoying this series, then feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you again, and please enjoy the rest of your day.